about Indian indices for global use. And to share the views, may I please request Professor Sachin Chaturvedi ji, Director General, Research and Information System for developing countries, to kindly be on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he works on issues related to development economics involving development finance, SDGs and South Corporation, apart from trade, investment and innovation linkages, with a special focus on WTO. Currently, Professor Chaturvedi ji is also an independent director on board of Reserve Bank of India. So we welcome you.
And good morning to everyone. It's a great pleasure to join SKOCH in this mega exercise that they have initiated on focusing issues that are there in our development indices, the issues which India can address in terms of responding to the global narratives that are coming, and as Shamika just said, also trying to do data processing that is required. I would take slightly different view in terms of contributing to the debate and discussion that we have initiated today. I would focus for another 10 minutes or so on 4 broad dimensions that are there and would be very precise. First and foremost is our idea as to what kind of development parameters we are looking at. And this is what something I thought would be of great significance in terms of India's growth performance, India's narrative setting, etc., is one part of the story in terms of how we take the development narrative forward. But second important part to that is what is it that we want in our development? What kind of parameters we want to get captured in our endeavors for economic development of the country. As we have been hearing from the Prime Minister in terms of making growth more inclusive, more responsive, how do we do that? Is it correct? And with Ridge and many other areas of Delhi, we are seeing how trees are disappearing, but Delhi's GDP is expanding. Do we really want that kind of growth? Do we really want that kind of development? So what parameters we are thinking of, what parameters we are ending up with, and then there are 2 more issues. One is at the global level. India is part of international, the UN Statistical Commission. What role we play in terms of transition of statistics at the global level as part of the lead of the UN Statistical Commission. And fourth and last, which very often doesn't appear in our statistical debates, is about the plight of statistical institutions at the bottom, at the level of districts and different states, at the state level. How many states have a statistical commission? Anyone has any guess? We need to have these institutions which are not responding in terms of how we go for localization of our development strategies. And this is what is important in terms of we going forward. At this point in the country, only 2 states have statistical commissions. Kerala, where no members are there, and 1 member which was earlier there was only part-time. Madhya Pradesh is the only state which has last year created statistical commission and has a full-fledged team which is trying to do calculations that are needed at the grassroots level. So I would just quickly go through these 4 points in next few minutes, and we would try to capture the dimensions that are needed. During the G20 presidency, Prime Minister made a statement not only before the G20 meeting, but also in his inaugural remarks at the G20 to say that we need to go beyond Kuznets. And Kuznets, as an economist, came up with the idea of how it is captured. What kind of GDP measurements we can do. And this is something which is important for us to see how do we take the debate beyond GDP. The United Nations Secretary General has already initiated a major exercise in terms of defining how we look at GDP, what kind of dimensions we can augment to enrich our understanding on GDP. And this is where the dimension is important. Again, in September, when the Future Summit is coming, Prime Minister is going, issues related to the dimensions of this augmented GDP would come in. What is that augmented GDP and what kind of work we can do? At my own institute at RIS, we have a team, Sabyasachi Saha, Arslan, they all are working on these dimensions of bringing in the historical debate that is there. And RIS back in 1984 contributed a major concept in terms of how we can bring in transition in GDP. So we are working since then. And our idea was that this transition after the Kuznets-led GDP adoption at the global level happened, we should go towards basic needs, capturing basic needs. And we tried that at that point when the Human Development Index by Mahbubul Haq and Amrita Sen was adopted. Human Development Index, as Sameer in the beginning brought out, the statistical mechanisms at the global level in terms of selection is in a way under siege by people with specific inclinations. And that part we need to shatter and bring out the ideas which are more inclusive and more responding to the kind of realities we want. We did not get into measurements of people who are getting their basic needs met at the grassroots level. We have no idea during COVID how many units in a particular district got closed. What is happening with people who have not borrowed from the banks, because since I sit on the board of the Reserve Bank, every time we've asked government and the RBI in terms of the plight of MSMEs with the borrowings which they have done. You may recall Finance Minister announcing special packages for MSMEs, but the data at the district level in terms of departments of industries of that state government, no indices available. So we need to get that data right in place. And so are the number of hospitals, number of beds, etc., etc. So the Millennium Development Goals, which we adopted in 2000, tried to capture. But this did not work. We have missed out the timeline. We then switched over to SDG in 2015. So what is the difference between SDG and MDG, the Millennium Development Goal and Sustainable Development Goal? It would take me 2 hours to explain, but let me just in 1 minute tell you, as I see the distinction between SDG and MDG, there are several differences, but one in current context, most important, is the idea of shift from quantity to quality. MDG में बार बार कहा गया कितने स्कूल्स, कितनी लंबी सड़कें, कितने सारे enrollments, ये सारे quantitative indicators हैं. फूड सिक्योरिटी या न्यूट्रिशनल सिक्योरिटी, ये जब सवाल आया तो ये क्वालिटेटिव शिफ्ट है. SDGs are talking about qualitative indicators that we need to have nutritional security and not food security. Food security is not taking us anywhere. Nutritional security would. And that's where the idea of development philosophy shifted, that if you want nutritional security, you have to have water, you have to have sanitation, you have to have health services, you have to have gender engagement. So how these parameters together are to be viewed, what kind of indices should come in. So the basic needs that we overlooked at that point, we need to revisit. And as a result, if you see under SDGs, goal 2 to goal 7 are exactly the goals which were there in MDGs. So transition and the burden and the challenge for the government hasn't been adequately addressed. We can't keep on postponing our fundamental requirement if we have to achieve Viksit Bharat by 2047. Some of these fundamental challenges at the grassroots level are to be addressed. And they are to be addressed not only in terms of providing education, health, fuel and water sanitation, but also in terms of basic statistics so that we are sure which district, aspirational, non-aspirational, what kind of parameter change they are going through. Every year we see floods in different parts of country, and that derails the development efforts. Do we have any statistical measurement of that? So if Viksit Bharat has to come in and statistical dimensions are to be addressed, then we need to address basic lacuna that is there. And that's where I say it is important for us to go forward. During the BRICS presidency in 2016, RIS suggested in terms of wellness index and how best we can bring in coherence across. If Brazilian G20 presidency is talking about protecting Amazon, then their idea is that there is no point in GDP growth at the cost, which Bolsonaro was trying, at the cost of compromising area under forest which Amazon provides. So we need to see how wellness-related indicators are important. Samir, you were saying that economists have nothing to do with technology, but there is full stream of economists who are working on technology. I myself have been working for now almost 30 years on technology and economics interlinkages, how innovation gives edge to trade, what kind of trade and innovation linkages are, how countries' exports change when they acquire new technology, and how it dips if they lose out on this. In fact, in my PhD, I showed how Singapore lost out when they did not focus on ICT, which was their forte. And since they did not focus on hardware, Malaysia and Thailand took away the advantage. Software came to India, and that's when Singapore in 1998 got into biopharma. And you look at even now, biopharma is giving Singapore 5% manufacturing growth push through technology strategy. So technology and economic growth are intertwined. If economists don't understand, the country would pay. So those who are into the process of understanding technology and innovation, it is important. In fact, 2018, when India, both the prime ministers of Japan and India in New York announced STI for SDG, we were the ones who evolved new indices as to how science, technology, innovation may contribute in terms of achieving sustainable development goals by bringing in, we did principal component analysis, but how access, equity, and inclusion, all three can be achieved through STI. Then comes in multidimensional frameworks of measuring well-being. 2024, India and the G20 presidency has talked about it, and that's when I say, Samir, if Viksit Bharat has to go forward, the idea, the indicators, not just for us in India, but for the global community, and as part of India's role at the United Nations Statistical Commission, is to see how comprehensive indices may come in, which factors in issues that are important in terms of biodiversity, in terms of natural protections that are needed, but also in terms of equitable housing, the cost of housing, the nature of housing that we are providing, the nature of income and the quality of jobs that we are talking of, community participation. Samir, if we don't look at role of community in our indices, we are not going to go forward in terms of how government should incentivize communities. At the time of COVID crisis, who helped the community? The community helped itself. But in our official statistical framework, there is no space for community. We need to incentivize communitization at different levels. RWAs, etc., are just manifestation of few housing societies which get a land and they come together. But people change and the spirit goes off. So we need to see how those incentives and mechanisms come up. But first we have to have the statistics of what kind of communities we are talking about. So that part I think is important. Quality of education, environment part, health, life satisfaction, the measurements which during G20 we pushed about the lifestyle for environment, those dimensions I think are important. Work and sort of life priority balance, which OECD countries have introduced, Viksit Bharat would have to go. Because India's challenge is the duality that we have. Some people have challenge of life and work balance, and some people are still looking for work. So that kind of societal imbalance that has come in, our statistical system for Viksit Bharat would have to address these dualities and would have to be responsive in terms of how we take that forward. At my own research institute, RIS, some of you may not be aware, is a policy research institute with Ministry of External Affairs. We work on issues that are related to India's future, both in terms of our international engagement, but also in terms of how financial dimensions can be added up and what part is important. You mentioned about ethics, and I think in context of technology, that is most important part of our development process, and also in terms of our statistical measurement. How we can do that in terms of AI, in terms of synthetic biology, and new technologies that are coming in are extremely important. At this point, my institute is working very closely with Department of Science and Technology to revisit India's science technology related indicators, because as I said, they have to be clubbed with our idea of economic progress, its inclusion across regions, and how different technologies are contributing and giving impetus to the expansion of GDP, what boost we are seeing from AI, from convergence of nano, biotech, and ICT. If these three technologies converge, what expansion, what acceleration we see in GDP is to be measured. And for that, we need to know what kind of enterprises are getting into that trajectory and what do we expect in terms of acceleration. There are precise estimations available, including on blue economy, dimensions which are important for ocean-based economy, which brings in not just fisheries. Some people think that blue economy is fisheries, oceans, fisheries. No. This is about insurance, it is about reinsurance, it is about shipbuilding. A whole set of new sectors are coming up. So India's efforts in terms of improving the quality of survey, creating alternative surveys, but also futuristic surveys which are not compromising our environmental concerns, ethical concerns, I think are important. Samir, thanks a lot for inviting me, and I stop here. Thank you.